Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I'm Hilmarie Hutchison, and today we have a UAE-based serial entrepreneur, founder, and managing partner with us, Jigar Sagar. With a strategic vision and a background in finance, Jigar has launched over 15 ventures valued at more than $350 million. His influence extends beyond the UAE, creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem transcending geographical boundaries. But before I get ahead of myself, let's hear from Jigar himself. Welcome, Jigar, to the show, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Could you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you to where you are today?
Sure. With such a lovely introduction, I think you have said it all, but the background basically goes into a young kid from the age of 10 being exposed to the world of entrepreneurship and family-owned businesses and having a curious mind, which led into the exploration of wanting to stand on one's own feet and accomplish something for himself. And that was my story. What I did with the exposure that I got as a kid and as a child was I converted that into business ventures and entrepreneurship ecosystem, basically working towards improving the entrepreneurship journey of everyone that comes after as well. And that's the mission.
Fantastic. So growing up as a child, this was always the dream, or did you ever fancy anything else?
As a child, I think it was very clear to me that cash is king, money matters. And I think that desire to earn money was very important as a kid. The need to earn money was very important. And the desire to be successful was even more important. But I think with time, there were many lessons learned along the way. And today, I strongly preach the idea that one should not be chasing money.
So you've changed your viewpoint in that, or your vision in that. So can you tell us what initially sparked your interest in entrepreneurship and finance?
Having come from a family business background, I had seen the commercial aspect of business from only one perspective, which was a single business owned by an individual. That was my father. I was interested in launching businesses. So when the time came around, when I was about 27 years old and I launched my first business, at that point, I don't think I envisioned having multiple businesses or being a serial entrepreneur. At that point, it was about that one business. When I was going through that journey, I realized that there were so many challenges that I was facing. Even though I come from a fortunate position of experience and exposure and background, there were multiple challenges that I was facing in just launching my business. I questioned myself and everything around me from the sense that if I'm facing all these challenges, what about everyone else? And how do I add value to the society by helping everyone overcome these challenges? And that sort of translated into every problem that I was facing every time I was opening up a business into a new business opportunity.
I love that viewpoint of yours, wanting to find a solution or a way to use the difficulties that you are facing to find solutions and help for other people that would come after you. That was what had an interest for you, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Absolutely. I do have an interest in finance, adding to what you had asked earlier from a very early age, because I was always surrounded by numbers and money, and it was always about counting the cash and reconciliation and banking, trading. I was always exposed to numbers, and I was always attracted towards numbers because I saw patterns in it. I saw data beyond numbers. And what attracted me to finance was the unique nature of finance, which is different to accountancy. That is the ability to dissect, analyze data. That analysis would help me take informed decisions when it came to my ventures or startups. or business launch. I think that inherent nature to keep solving problems, keep solving puzzles. And every time there was a new problem emerging in front of me, wanting to convert that into a solution by the means of launching one more business is what made me a serial entrepreneur.
That's always the best reason to create a new business, is when there is a gap, when there is a need, and then solving for that need. I think that's the key to successful businesses. You mentioned that your approach involves creating blue oceans within red oceans. Could you explain this strategy and how this has contributed to your success?
I think it starts with the self-realization that I'm not an Einstein. I'm not probably going to invent something. When you look at red oceans, you're basically talking about existing industries where there is heavy competition and everyone is pretty much selling on price and the margins are shrinking. What I started to do was get tired of this situation and said, how do I shift the focus on creating value while driving the costs down? How do I create demand out there, even if it's from within the industry that I'm in? So you effectively have an existing red ocean business, but how do you shape it or pivot it in a way whereby you can create demand that people did not think that they needed before, right? So you're effectively creating a completely new audience that was untapped. And you're doing this at the same time while focusing on driving the costs down. So it sort of helps you become the industry leader and pioneer. And I think because I'm no Einstein, I wanted to be able to yet be a pioneer and hence started creating these blue oceans within these red oceans.
E-ZMS and AppyZap are among your notable ventures with significant valuations. Can you maybe discuss the innovative aspects of these projects and their potential impact on global economic jurisdictions?
E-ZMS is the economic zone management systems. It's a tech product that we brought into the economic city management industry out here in the UAE, whereby what was happening was the free zones were pretty much living in the dinosaur era, where everything was still being done on Excel and paper, and trade licenses were being issued with a wet signature and laminations. This was software and end-to-end solution that we brought to the economic jurisdictions, which allowed them to completely digitize their customer servicing and the document generation. So basically, it became a tool which is something that we call permit as a service, because traditionally, government services were thought of as bureaucratic needs. The approach I had to it was anything and everything a government does is basically issue a permit. So whether you can think of permit to drive a car, permit to live, permit to reside in a location, that's your tenancy contract. So anything and everything that the government does is pretty much revolving around permit. And how do you bring digitization to the government sector? So for that, we created E-ZMS. While AppyZap is a complete different ball game, it started with, again, the pain points while I was launching my own ventures, which needed technology in there. And we would have to go talk to software development agencies. And no matter how hard you try, there is always going to be a loss in translation. There's always going to be something of a gap between what's in your head as a vision and what the software development agency will deliver. I thought of building a complete no-code software development software and integrate it with AI somewhat along the lines of ChatGPT, whereby instead of asking ChatGPT to write a speech for you or give you a strategic plan, it is to feed in the inputs of what kind of software do you require, and the program being able to basically spit it out for you. So you have a software without you knowing any coding.
That sounds absolutely brilliant. And how long has the AppyZap been available?
AppyZap is basically we have reached the MVP stage and we have done the valuations because we were going into the Series A funding. And I think it still requires a little bit of fine tuning before I'm comfortable launching it to the market. Because as you're aware, AI is evolving immensely. So I don't think it is any more about just the voice aspect. It is the ability to probably even integrate aspects such as the Apple Vision Pro, etc., so that you can visually see the software in front of your eyes that's being built for you, and you can play around with it and tweak it the way you want to tweak it. I think because technology has evolved, it only makes sense to integrate the latest technology again back into what we have built before we launch it to the market on a massive scale. But we have had successful installations of the software of the current version of the system at multiple clients for almost 6 months now.
Amazing. And as you say, the technology is progressing and changing at such a rapid speed. How do you stay ahead of the competition?
I think it is pretty simple in terms of how I like to stay ahead of the competition, which is I am my biggest competition. I wake up every morning challenging myself to do better than what I did yesterday and focusing primarily inwards while being aware of the surroundings and the landscape, right? Which is what normally you call as competition. If your business continuously focuses on solving real life problems and you are aware of what problem it is solving today and you are constantly aware of monitoring the problem statement to see if it exists as it was yesterday, and if the problem statement has evolved, have you had the ability to pivot your business to solve the new problem or the new need of the market? You will always be one step ahead of the competition, because at any given time, if your focus is on problem solving, you will never be out of business.
Excellent. Yes, you've mentioned that a few times in our discussion so far, the importance of solving for a real problem. That is what then leads to success. Sort of on similar lines, in your opinion, what is the key to fostering successful startups?
For a successful startup, there are some fundamental pillars. One is purpose that we have been talking about, which is the purpose to solve a real life problem. The second is people. I think it's key to have the right people on board. And when you're building a team, you have to make sure you are not necessarily building a team of experts, but you're building a team with the expectations of filling the gaps in comparison, right? So you have to have an understanding of what are you bringing to the table and what are the requirements of the business. And every hiring that happens from that point on needs to be catered and fostered towards filling in those gaps rather than just hiring experts for the sake of hiring experts. And the third thing for me is systems. So to make sure that you have technology which is carrying the burden ultimately and not the customer, not the employee. You have to focus on utilizing technology to carry the burden of the process. And then whatever burden is remaining that cannot be done through systems, that should be carried by your team, your employees, and the least amount of burden should be put onto the customer. By doing this, you are inherently effectively creating a customer-focused business without even realizing. If you make sure that your purpose is right, you have the right people, and you have the right systems in place and processes in place as well, you will create a successful venture.
I love that. And I also love the point about the people. You're not just hiring experts. Of course, they have to have the skill, but you're hiring for the right position, the right fit within the team, so that you're filling the gaps. I think that's absolutely critical. Excellent. Now, as we mentioned earlier, you are a serial entrepreneur. What qualities do you believe are essential for aspiring entrepreneurs to succeed?
One of the key qualities that an aspiring entrepreneur needs to have is the ability to be aware and self-analyze, self-reflect, and to be able to gauge themselves better. Everything starts from that point, right? So we spoke about making sure that you're hiring the right people, and it starts by first understanding what are your own skills. And not necessarily skills, but also what do you want to do? Not just something that you're good at, but what do you really want to do that you're good at? So I think it starts with that self-awareness as the number one quality. But beyond that, I think it is the ability to have that perseverance, the grit, and the determination to keep moving forward. I think a lot of people are bogged down by the emotional attachment that they have to their own startups. And I think if you can create a sense of a quality which is detachment, an emotional detachment from the business, and focus primarily on the speed with which you're going to either hit the success or the failure, you will realize that you're saving the most valuable resource of your life, which is time. I would rather go fast at it and fail than to have a slow, painful suffering because I'm unable to let go.
Okay, to be self-aware, to know your own skills and also with that your own limitations. And then, as you mentioned, to persevere and have the grit to keep moving forward. Now, I know that you personally also have a lot of other interests that involve traveling, Formula One, fashion, and grooming. How do these hobbies influence your professional life and work ethic?
Anything and everything around you is a good form of education and a good source of knowledge and something to learn from. When I travel, I'm constantly trying to absorb different cultures. I'm trying to analyze how do different societies interact, connect, what makes one section of a society happy in comparison to other. It's basically understanding human behavior. When you talk about Formula One, you also are talking about the need for speed, yet the need with which you need to think fast. You have to be able to make informed decisions very quickly in order to survive. Let's call it that, because a simple mistake, a microsecond, could be a life and death situation. Now, it also teaches, sports is also something that teaches you the importance of accepting wins and failures and continuously working towards improving yourself. But when you talk about fashion, for example, it teaches you things that are relevant today will not be relevant tomorrow. So there is only one constant, and that constant is called change. I think these sort of aspects of my hobbies, I bring them into my professional life and the way I approach things, even at work, which is I do not get tied down to what is, because I'm constantly focusing on what needs to be based on what is.
Very good. Now we've reached one of the most exciting segments of our show, a fun, fast-paced game where I'll ask you some rapid-fire questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
One book or podcast that inspires you?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, that's a classic, yes. A tech innovation you believe will shape the future of business?
I believe it will be something coming out of Apple, most probably the next couple of versions of the Vision Pro.
Are you team Android or iOS?
I am team iOS.
How do you unwind after a busy day?
I like to listen to music and probably go on a drive, but effectively just put myself in a zone of meditation, no matter where I am and what I'm doing.
Okay, that might also answer my next question. What is one thing that you do every day, no matter how busy you get?
I remind myself to have fun every day. Every morning, I wake up and I look at myself in the mirror and I ask myself, what am I going to do today? And the answer I have is, I'm going to have fun.
That was the end of the game show. Thank you for playing along.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, we'd like to ask about your green pill moment. So if you took the green pill to go back in time and change one thing about your journey, what would it be?
I believe that everything is in abundance. Wealth is in abundance, people, skills, everything is in abundance. And there's only one thing that is finite, which is time. If I had the chance to go back in time and change something, I would change that desire of the 10-year-old to chase money. I think it was only probably in my early 20s that I changed that mindset. And I wish I could have changed it in my early teens itself, so that I would have a runway of even extra 10 years, which was chase opportunities instead of chasing money. And in order to identify opportunities and to win those opportunities and win at those opportunities, keep building your skill sets and your knowledge base. If you have the skills and the knowledge and you're constantly chasing opportunities and winning those opportunities, money will come chase you.
Such interesting insight from somebody who's done and have achieved as much as you have. That money is not the thing to chase, but to grow, to learn, to look for opportunities. I absolutely love that. Jigar, thank you so much for sharing your compelling story with us today. I'm sure that our audience will find this conversation as inspiring as I have. I hope that your journey and advice will spark some motivation and new ideas among young and inspiring entrepreneurs listening to this podcast. Before we wrap up, could you please let our listeners know where they can find and follow you? And we'll, of course, also include this in the show notes.
Firstly, thank you so much for having me here and having this conversation. It was lovely talking to you. I hope that if there is one thing that any listener takes away from this conversation, it is that don't be afraid to pursue your dreams. If you're feeling afraid, the solution to fear is to get the know-how and knowledge, and then all fears will disappear. And if you want to connect with me, please feel free to connect with me on my Instagram handle, which is at Jigar Sagar, or LinkedIn, or please feel free to drop me a message on my website, which is jigarsagar.com.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining me today, Jigar. I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us bring you more inspiring stories like Jigar's.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.